Right now, our instincts tell us that we feel safest interacting with people in the bubbles and groups that feel familiar to us. But what if kids today grew up braver than we are, with instincts that had evolved? What if the world were full of children who grew up feeling safe and happy, interacting with people in all sorts of different bubbles? Today, I'm going to explain why it's essential for us to help children move from fearful to globe smart, and how we can do it. Fear is a most basic human emotion. For millions of years, fear of the unfamiliar, of the foreign, of situations where we couldn't predict what would happen because we didn't know the people or the place. That instinctual fear kept our ancestors alive. It was essential for our survival. But this isn't 1,000,000 or 1,000 or even 100 years ago. This is 2015. And that fight or flight instinct has gone from being essential to being an obstacle to peace, security, possibly even our survival. Now, as humans, we tend to group ourselves to feel safe. Our familiar bubbles offer a sense of belonging and security because we know what to expect. And in recent years, technology has helped push globalization into hyperdrive. And this means that nearly every society around the globe is seeing more and more bubbles of diversity coming closer and closer together. That safety distance, that cushion of space that used to exist between different groups around the globe, is narrowing. If we want the future to be a thriving, safe place for children around the globe, it's essential for them to feel safe and happy with friends both inside and outside their familiar bubbles. Now, I thought I'd start by sharing a little bit about myself and some of my bubbles. I'm American, born and raised in the Midwest. I'm a native English speaker. I'm a woman. I'm married. I'm a mother. I'm educated. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Christian. And I'm white. Now, since we are in the Netherlands, I'm going to assume that a lot of you are Dutch and native Dutch speakers, which I could consider an outgroup. Basically, a bubble I try to avoid or at least not intentionally engage. Now, the groups I listed for myself are the obvious ones. Those based on nationality, language, religion, ethnicity, class. And all these different bubbles make life on Earth really interesting. I'm sure many members of the Dutch group find American behavior quite entertaining. Just as we are fascinated by biking to work in high heels and a political system with 20+ parties. The problems come when we make assumptions about people in other groups that lead us to treat them differently than we treat those in our own groups. Researchers have measured explicit prejudice in children only 3 and 4 years of age. Implicit bias or unconscious bias also starts early, and it doesn't go away easily. This is the hidden prejudice, the kind that maybe we don't even know we have or that we're acting on. It's almost a subconscious bias in favor of our own groups and against other groups. But it doesn't have to be like this, not for us, and certainly not for our children. Since the dawn of time, children have been taught the skills they'll need as adults. In this era, that includes a long list of 21st century skills, such as social and emotional intelligence, empathy, creative and adaptive thinking, cooperation. But we've left out the most essential. To thrive in the diverse future that awaits, it's essential for children to feel safe and happy and to choose to interact with people outside their bubbles. I call this globe smart. Now, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and imagine that you're riding on a train. A man with a skin color different than your own sits down next to you. He mentions that the book you're reading is one of his favorites, and a conversation develops. By the time you reach your stop, you've discussed a whole range of topics, from the stresses of commuting to work every day, to summer vacation plans, to what you're planning to have for dinner. Okay, you can open your eyes. Noticed anything different? Probably not. Not yet. But it turns out that our imaginations are even more powerful than we realize. Since 2009, more than 70 studies from around the world have found that imagined contact, like what you just did, can change attitudes and behavior, making us more open to interaction with other groups. And here's the kicker. Imagined contact works best with children. In 2011 and 2014, researchers in Italy and the UK used imagined contact in school settings to help reduce prejudice against immigrants in those communities. Now, the imagined interaction was stimulated using a photo and a brief background description of the child that the students would imagine playing with, and a context in which the play date would occur, at a playground, at a park, etc. The results? In just 3 15-minute sessions, spread over the course of 3 weeks, the children who had imagined playing with an immigrant child reported more positive attitudes about immigrant children, greater perceived similarities with immigrant children, and more willingness to interact with immigrant children. Science is telling us that there's hope. In the 21st century, we can move beyond mere prejudice reduction or simply tolerating others. We can create a new path. And that's why I'm here today. 6 years ago, I was reading a small book called Joyce's Day to my son, Sebastian. Published in 1974 in South Africa, it's an incredibly simple book with photos of Joyce doing everyday kid things. Like that of most 3-year-olds, Sebastian's world was pretty small. His familiar bubble consisted of our family, friends, our home, and a few routines like going to the store and the library. And as I read, he started to say things like, "I wish I could play marbles with Joyce and her brother Thabu. It'd be fun to have ice cream with them. It'd be cool, Mom, if you could carry our groceries home on your head." I agreed, that would actually be beyond cool. That would be amazing. It was as if I could see his imagination, sparked by Joyce's Day, preparing him for life in a globalized world. Wanting to encourage this, I went looking across New York for more Joyce-like books. And when I couldn't find what I was looking for, I decided to try and make my own. One Globe Kids. To make One Globe Kids, I work with real children and their families around the world. In each story, we focus on things that will be familiar and relatable to kids everywhere. Getting ready for your day. Things you do for fun. For some reason, photos of dental hygiene became something I always tried to include. Sorry, Sebastian, it's not just you, buddy. It seems to be required of kids the world round. Unlike Joyce in 1974, Janisa and all the children who volunteered to be part of One Globe Kids helped make it an especially engaging experience.
Maramote, hello, my name is Janisa, and I live in Burundi.
Before I started to work on One Globe Kids, I had spent many years living, working, and making friends in the Middle East and Africa and Europe. And making the foreign feel familiar had become a way for me to connect the dots of my life. But what I didn't realize after I started was how much my own understanding of what feels foreign and how to make it familiar would change in a deeply personal way. When our third son, Joseph, was born with Down syndrome, it felt as if my own child were foreign to me. Until then, I had felt comfortable in my familiar mommy bubble. But suddenly there was no space between that bubble and one I knew nothing about. I was scared. In the weeks and months after his birth, Yo stopped feeling foreign to me. I would snuggle his cuddly sweetness and wonder how I ever thought of him as a stranger. But it took effort to make Down syndrome feel familiar. And all the while, Joseph himself was showing all the ways in which he's just like kids everywhere. He likes to play with cars. He brushes his teeth. He's in love with the iPad. Let's think of foreign as simply not yet familiar. The bigger we make our bubbles, the more comfortable, safe, and secure we feel no matter where we are or who we're with. And that confidence and willingness to engage can ripple out, encouraging others and creating a new global trajectory in which we are all globe smart. Thank you.